Tim's second season directing Louis Vuitton's fashion show, Fall Winter 2024. Check it out. Right, here we go. Wow, okay, I just have to stop here and say I have chills listening to these clearly Native American voices. From what I found, I've looked into this. Lakota and Dakota singers were hired to work with Pharrell on this collection, advising on the overall production of it and recruitment of the singers and models. So, you know, it's definitely different. I feel like so far it's an homage to tribal people. You know, I'm getting this imagery of the Southwest, this kind of rocky landscape, the native models, the classic Louis Vuitton high quality, you know, materials and silhouettes with the native motifs built onto them. So I'm curious to see more, you know, of what is to come here and find out a bit more of what is happening with, you know, cultural appropriation versus cultural inspiration. Let's keep watching. Work. The accessories, the jacket, look at that beadwork, look at that embroidery. Okay. Oh. It's giving cowboy, it's giving... Yes, the bag is honestly giving Balenciaga, but alright. Wow, I love the suit. I love the embroidery. Beautiful, structured, classic. Honestly, would wear to work very Pharrell. Very much what we've seen of his work and his style before, with previous inspiration with Louis Vuitton collections coming from the Southwest. And his personal collection as well. Okay, suede. Giving Dr. Evil the cut on the neck. Okay. Ruffles. Big belt buckle, kind of different for Louis. Oh yes, look at these accessories. It's giving horses. Oh wow, look at that bone structure. Okay, not about the collection, but that model is stunning. Oh yes, okay, more accessories kind of outshining the actual look itself. Love the tassels. Looks like something you need to ride a horse. Wow, look at that this way. This model is really giving it. Swag. This diva feels out of place. I like that there's a very diverse set of models here. We have, you know, so far native, black, Asian, white. Seems like a really inclusive set of models. It's interesting how some of these things I've seen at like, you know, trading posts in the Southwest. Like some of these truly are regular clothes that you can get for like $50, but you know, it's going to cost you $3,000 to get it from Louis Vuitton. These accessories look really expensive, like way more than the outfits themselves. There's definitely a lot of detail here, probably some gold hardware. And throughout this whole collection, I'm just not seeing kind of what I've seen from LVMH Native-inspired collections in the past, I wanted to actually just take a moment to draw people's attention to a previous example of an LVMH company. Dior, in the 1999, I believe, created a runway called Diorient Express that was inspired by the myth of Pocahontas. Here you literally see a train coming in with settlers and a native person jumping on between two cars of this train, looking to be in combat with another native person, tomahawk in hand, a settler woman with a kind of native-inspired jacket, looks like a blanket was turned into a 19th century silhouette. Essentially, this runway was about Pocahontas, and I believe Pocahontas here in this white dress. As we know, is not a Disney princess. She's not, living a happy life. She was sex trafficked. She was sold off by her father to the British with Radcliffe and his people, and unfortunately used as a boy to advance the interests of pride and save them from their colonization by the British. So this is only about 20 years ago this video, runway in this video came out. I'm not sure that Dior and LVMH really how far they've come, but there's a precedent set here in terms of cultural appropriation and the kind of bad messaging the company is willing to engage in that makes people suspicious of this runway and what kind of Pharrell is trying to take on, and what his understanding is of the brand history, and whether he's kind of able to acknowledge that. Not necessarily that he was responsible for doing that, but as someone who's leading the company, a company within this group, they probably should be aware of what he's participating in producing elements of native culture on these like European productions. All under collection. I think you kind of get the idea here. I'm going to go back and finish this. And actually, let's just see what Pharrell said here about this collection.
You see cowboys, portrayed, you see only a few versions. You never really get to see like what some of the original cowboys really look like. They look like us, they look like me. They look black, they look, Native American, which is the reason why it's so nice to work with the Lakota tribes out of North Dakota, Standing Rock Sioux, and the native voices of resistance. So it's like, being...
Okay, I want to take a moment here to acknowledge the fact that cowboys are not a group that are looked upon kindly by a lot of Native Americans. The cow ranching industry was a settler project that was taken on in order to advance the cattle industry, the broader sort of expansion into the West by settlers. Settlers sort of took on the mantle of establishing these ranches and clearing Native Americans off the land that they wanted to use to establish these ranches. And it wasn't until really the 20th century that the idea of a cowboy became sort of glamorized as a part of this like myth of the American fable. In fact, cowboys were kind of vigilantes. Cowboys were a combination of ranchers. Cowboys also included members of the cavalry who were going around and collecting scalps for rewards from the U.S. government and federally and on the local level. So there's really not a need for inclusion of Native Americans and Black people into the category of cowboys. And I understand that there are iterations of cowboys today that include, these groups, but I feel it's based on a lack of understanding of history, and I think that Pharrell's commentary here personally is a little bit misguided and uninformed, but this is sort of his opinion, I guess.
Being able to weave the music and working with them on the music into like this vision of us just expressing ourselves from a place of love, no judgment. Just think about like telling your story and telling your people's story.
No, it's not about a story of love. This is like the most naive, like uninformed interpretation of, the inspiration behind this project. This is like an American person who was the product of an educational system that didn't tell him the truth about Native American history, about the history of cowboys, about representation of Black and Native people within that term, within that group. I think it's very, rose-colored lens here. I don't appreciate his kind of lack of really research or historical context here, and kind of just blowing it over in an artistic way to say, with broad sort of, just broad strokes, like, oh, it's about the feeling, it's about the music, it's about the inspiration, it's about inclusivity. Not really.
As best you can, and doing it candidly and with love that's an overwhelming feeling to kind of pull it off, and it felt like we did, like the feeling in the room just felt like a whole lot of love, and that's what.
This runway is really about Pharrell's personal style, and he's grasping at straws in order to justify his whole process and the outcome here. I don't think that Lakota and Dakota people weren't a part of, actually Kawana Chasing Horse said it better than I can here. Lakota people weren't your Southwest cowboys. Seems like you just want to, cowboys and Indians. There is so much wrong with the collection as a native model who has worked with brands on true, authentic collaborations and respect. And let me tell you, this ain't it. And this is another form of cultural appropriation and exploitation. What he did wasn't enough. It's the bare minimum. A good example of collaboration and respect is the Naomi Glasses and Polo Ralph Lauren campaign. He just wanted to save face after his 2014 Elle magazine cover wearing a war bonnet and headdress. Ultimate cultural appropriation plus hashtag Free Palestine. She goes on to say, and let's just address what she said initially here. Kawana Chasing Horse is probably the most prominent Native American fashion model today. She's been on the cover of Vogue in the United States and abroad. She's really a voice in the community for not only fashion, but missing and emerging Indigenous women, land back, and other Native social interests. I think her calling out, the fact that, Pharrell Williams was on the cover of wearing a bonnet back in the day is something that we can't forget. And I don't think it was necessarily his intention to, swipe past that necessarily, but clearly that was something that did not hold him back in creating this collection. So she goes on to say here, Kawana says, he said the Lakota tribes out of North Dakota, Standing Rock Sioux, yet many of them aren't Lakota from Standing Rock. Plus, Standing Rock is mostly in South Dakota, LMAO. I don't know, he just seems like he knows very little about the people he quote-unquote worked with. And the Southwest theme with people from the plains, it doesn't make sense. If you wanted Southwest cowboy, should have went with Navajo artists or Apache artists, but also not saying that the few natives that got to be part of this shouldn't be proud. Happy to get to see their work on a world stage, but this ain't an LMAO. So Kawana is correct. There's a very common kind of practice of mixing, this origin story of like the Southwest and Western expansion with Plains Indians, and just assuming that people from these vastly different tribes are all together. And it's really disrespectful in a way that other cultures really don't put up with, to say that someone from South Africa and their culture is the same as someone from Nigeria, that's sort of the equivalent of what's happening here, or someone from England is of the same cultural background as someone from Italy. They're very different. People are very aware of the differences. We have enough information here, I think, in 2023 with, computers in our hands and on our desks at home to understand the differences between these tribes that sit at both ends of, what is now called the United States, in the very north of the country and the very south. So I find that Kwana makes an excellent point here, and he didn't really take a very meticulous stance in terms of the production of this collection. If he thinks that working with these tribes really, the Standing Rock Sioux would, go and pass off like Southwest, Navajo, Apache, this backdrop, or as part of as emblematic of like all Native tribes.
What the goal was, and I thank God that we got a chance to do that. You see,
so that's that on that. And LVMH honestly has a backstory of, even more recently, perhaps about 10 years ago, of Dior creating a Sauvage fragrance, famously featuring Johnny Depp, Me Too, Johnny Depp, where they featured a Native American who is, in the U.S. Constitution called a merciless Indian savage. So calling this fragrance Sauvage is really reinforcing this, degradation of Native people, this kind of demeaning conflation of the uncivilized person, with Native Americans, this narrative as old as the U.S. Constitution and even earlier is being carried out in something as seemingly unrelated as a, French perfume ad.
We are the land. Dior.
Yeah, no, it's not it. I don't like it. 10 seconds.
We are the land. Dior.
Ridiculous. I don't want to see it. Native Americans are not savages. Savages should not be a term used in reference to any group, especially marginalized groups. So that's that on that. Let's get back to the runway here. Honestly, this music gave me chills at first. I love the music. As Kwana said, congratulations to the Native artist who got featured, whose work was featured on this runway. It's a big opportunity for them. There are other examples like Naomi Glasses and her collaboration with Ralph Lauren, which itself could be the point, criticized for, as a brand, Ralph Lauren, for trying to sweep under the rug the fact that they're essentially today equated with Native American fashion design. If you think of Native fashion design today, you think of Ralph Lauren. You don't think of an indigenous designer. There's no one designer today that holds equal weight to Ralph Lauren in terms of Native American design. Yet Naomi Glasses is probably the first and most prominent designer he's ever collaborated with on any of his collections. So, I would like to see one Native designer named here as, credited with creating these designs that are, emblazoned upon all of these classic Louis Vuitton silhouettes. So we're not seeing that here. None of the research I've done has produced really specific names, but I'm going to take due diligence TikTok probably to find more. Intellectually, I recognize there are many problems with this collection. It's offensive on a number of levels. Yet it's just purely aesthetically speaking, it is many of these pieces are very effective. And it doesn't help that some of these native models are absolutely stunning. Along with the rest of the ones, obviously. But, you know, as someone who's starved, you know, starved for beauty, there's not really a lot of native models running these runways. And so I just have special attention reserved for those people when I see them walking down the runway, you know. I'm sorry. Really a pretty robust number of pieces here. I'm kind of surprised. Some of them are really running down the runway. It's interesting how some of the sort of aesthetics, some of the features and accessories are remaining, but then the silhouettes get increasingly more modern as he's incorporating like cargo pants and kind of like modern workwear, Carhartt, you know, collaboration pieces into this collection, and also these kind of barcode designs as well. Getting more and more industrial. I mean, like this, that vest, where am I on the subway? What's happening here? I don't understand the transition, to be honest, between these kind of Native American cultural roots, you know, harkening back to the American myth, the origin story of the United States. How we're getting from that all the way to these like construction and, you know, subway worker adjacent outfits. I'm it's a little all over the place. Honestly, I feel like this jacket was a blanket on my childhood bed growing up. And the yellow jacket reminds me of one worn in like a storybook I read as a kid. I want to say it's like a Curious George jacket. What was that? Okay, here's I like the painted nail. What is in that box? What do you need that box for? Would you carry that around New York? I mean, you can't even fit that on one subway seat. Casual, big white down jacket and a native blanket for the park. My usual Central Park look. I understand that Pharrell is incorporating, you know, travel pretty heavily here. Sometimes it seems like the looks are more a city look, but then he's carrying these pieces of luggage that are clearly, you know, meant to be for international travel. The untrained eye, which is like maybe most of the people who will be purchasing any of this and viewing this video and the original without my review are going to think like this is like so chic. I imagine people are going to be spending a ton of money on these limited release items, and really examining the underpinnings of any of this, which I hope isn't the case. I hope everyone watches this video and does perhaps additional research of their own indigenous TikTok, which will be full of reads like Juan Chasing Horse, in the next few days. I hope people take a look at that and really start to think about, what cultural appropriation and appreciation look like today. Those terms are not dead, and they're very much alive in the fashion industry. And despite some of these collaborations, and some, more adequate acknowledgements and then inadequate ones, like the one that Pharrell made of the, unnamed Lakota and Dakota people he worked with, quote unquote. Those terms are very much applicable. We have to really think critically about these runways, and even when you put kind of a underrepresented face at the helm of a brand like this, it doesn't really wipe away their own transgressions personally or that of the brands, but that I think is part of the intent of appointing someone like Pharrell Williams to creative direct lines with this kind of theme. And I think that Pharrell is a little bit of an unconscious and well-meaning victim to these much more, history and future-minded executives who are hiring people like him, at LVMH and elsewhere to kind of absolve white leaders of these fashion institutions of their really deleterious choices on the communities that they are really just full out stealing from. I would like to see the artists, the designers, the musicians, the models being paid a lot of money here. I would like the lands that the LVMH offices have for their, in the United States returned to the original peoples of those lands. I would like some kind of reparations here for the people involved in this project, because truly no one's getting even a name on an Instagram post, let alone the money they deserve for their culture being treated hodgepodge like this. I'm a little bit confused overall by this collection. I think it's, again, aesthetically, a lot of pieces are very beautiful. If I had a bunch of money, I would create an archive just to, look at them and wonder and, say this is what cultural appropriation looks like today, under the, leadership of, another person of color. Okay, it's a native sign language, cool. So that's the video. That's my reaction. I think that there are more questions than answers here. I look forward to seeing more discussion around what Native representation should look like in fashion today, how people should be credited, how people should be compensated. These are questions that we're not talking about more openly. And if we were, we would have designers able to hold the industry accountable, and Native designers themselves be the people representing our culture and fashion and reaping the financial benefits of selling this obviously, this style that has huge cultural cachet with the world, and not, these European labels, these legacy brands. So hopefully we can do better in the future by having just more open dialogue around this, and really being direct with even people like Pharrell Williams about the impact of their choices on the people they claim to work with. So hopefully LVMH is listening.